Hi, I'm Justin Arnett Graham.
And I'm Nariba Shepherd.
And this is Terms of Service.
Yeah.
What's poppin', Nariba?
You know, just hanging out, getting ready for life to continue happening every day because I'm alive. How are you?
I actually feel the exact same.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you know, because it's that 2020 and 2021.
2021. We are recording in 2020. When you hear this, it will be 2021. So therefore, we are projecting ourselves into a positive experience to come.
Amen.
Yes.
Preach on.
We need that.
Yes.
My therapist would be very happy to hear that.
Well, I'm very happy to hear it from you, from your therapist.
Aww.
Thank you.
I'll share my therapist with you.
Please do.
Okay.
Okay. So, we have another guest. And
Two times.
Yeah, we have our second guest. This is starting to feel so
real.
Yeah.
Authentic?
I already felt real, but like it's feeling even realer. Yes.
Yes.
Lexi.
Thanks for inviting me to your party.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for accepting our invitation.
Like, if you want to introduce yourself to our audience and like give us a little like rundown about who you are, what things you enjoy. So far, we've talked about our signs in every single recording we've done. So if you want to like throw that out there.
And I've still been an Aquarius.
Yeah,
so.
I'm still an Aries, so.
Okay, so I'm a Libra.
I fucks with Libras hard.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I know that we need a lot of validation, and we like pretty things. Is that I don't know if that's correct.
Welcome to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
great.
So
it sounds about right.
That sounds about right for your people.
Yeah.
Libras. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I fucks with you, so I think that's what I need to know, right? So, Lexi, if you would please,
introduce
regale
yourself
us with, who you are.
I am Lexi Mooneyham. I am formerly a member of the industry. I was a server, and then I left, and now I work in marketing. So a lot less exciting, but
Great.
it is what it is. But I am still very much embedded in industry culture because it's where all of my friends are and, the good food and drinks are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I worked at a lot of different restaurants, and now I have a social media marketing agency.
Dope.
Just a little group, a little crew based
Casual.
here in Chicago.
Yeah.
An agency. Agency is a very strong word.
Ain't it though?
A handful of us just on Instagram for different brands all day long.
But a solid crew at that. So would you say that you're, because I feel like people would hear that like, oh, like industry adjacent, but I wouldn't feel it's industry adjacent. I feel like it's just another facet of the hospitality experience, right?
That's the thing. I think that when people think industry, they think about food and beverage, but there's like a whole bunch of other services that are grouped into hospitality in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so many of the skills I developed as a server have lent themselves very well to what I do now. And there's no better way to handle like an internet troll for one of your brand accounts than like thinking back to unruly guests at a bar. So.
Listen, I agree with you 110%. I feel like a lot of people think that these are non-transferable skills, but in a brief stint during the pandemic, I worked for a CBD company, and they were like, oh my God, you're so good at everything. And I'm like, this is like 20% of the work that I used to have to do before, so thanks.
Totally.
You're
can
like,
work
I'm
anywhere.
embodying problem-solving skills
Yes.
and ways of navigating people.
Which is like 90% of what you're doing.
Definitely.
Now.
Or like how you used to have your customer service voice when you were like touching a table, and now you have that in email where you're trying to convey very aggressive
I hope this email finds you well.
Yeah, but also I don't. I don't. Per my last email, I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused.
Yes. Oh my God. What's it?
Couldn't agree more. Actually, I sent a per my last email earlier today.
I'm like, you send those on the daily, I feel like.
Oh, yes. And the attitude is always the attachment.
Oh, my God.
Always. I'm just like, feel free to open that and, don't scan it for a virus. It's fine. Yeah, it's gonna be right there. But yeah, so where do we start?
Oh boy, there's so much to talk about.
So much.
All right, well, should we start with where you're working right now, which is social media? I hope that everyone can feel my wide open arms as I say that umbrella ass word. But yeah,
I feel like every time you do that, Nariba, everyone feels it because it's just so. It's like that focused energy.
That's my Virgo rising, keeping me together on a daily basis.
Yeah, perfect. Lexi, kick us off.
So I work specifically in social media. I work in a variety of digital marketing facets, but I specialize in social media. So professionally, I'm handling social media for brands. That's how we get our money. Brands pay us to create their content, to translate their messaging from marketing to specifically social media, blah, blah, blah. But also personally, I'm looking at social media through a variety of lenses. I'm taking a lot of my life experience, I used to work in crisis counseling and mental health, so I'm looking at things through a lot of different lenses when I'm not only on social media personally, but also when I'm handling it for brands or when I'm consulting for individuals or whomever needs social media help.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That sounds hella responsible of you. Look at you putting mental health to work.
Well, okay, I try. But sometimes I also get angry.
Oh, yeah, no, you're fine.
Could that be part of the clapback culture?
I had to take myself off of Facebook because I can't handle this.
Yeah.
I'm almost there.
That's another episode.
Yeah.
It's it's like a multi-episode arc that will forever be ever evolving. That's how I feel about it. And yeah, that clapback culture just definitely resonated with what you said that you want to, respond. Because when I was talking to you about something entirely different, I saw in a deck that you had provided me, it's gently clap back. And I was like, oh, I like that. So what does that mean?
Yeah, what is a gentle clap back? Because I ain't gentle.
Okay, so this is something that I will put in my decks for work. A lot of brands, this is what happens. People come to us and they're like, we're a cool brand. We're edgy. We want to be like Wendy's. And that's because
that
Wendy's,
girl.
And I'm like, okay, do you really want to be like Wendy's? So what I put in my professional documentation is a gentle clap back to where if we have someone getting sassy with us, in comments as a brand, that we will gently, professionally, it's that whole per my last email type language. It's not the F you language. Which is what I do personally.
Yeah. I don't know how to not do that, so I was hoping that maybe you'd have a little tip for me, but it's fine. I'll figure it out one day. I'm burn it to the ground and we'll start over every time.
But then also just being hey, why are you even talking to me when you have 2 followers on Instagram?
Damn.
Is that a gentle clapback? Or
it's a clapback.
That's a clapback.
Okay.
That's a full clap.
It's a full. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a golf clap.
No.
Okay. So yeah, that's some might call it a standing ovation. So.
Yes. Yes. You did it.
Thank you so much. You know I had to give it to him.
A little. Every time. Okay, so in the realm of the gentle clapback, what is an example of that? And how does that work in favor for the brands?
So I think that one of the benefits of social media is that everyone is given a voice. And when you're just glancing at a comment section, for the most part, everyone is equal.
Yeah.
And so when you have any random person able to say absolutely whatever they want in your comment section, for example, there are technical ways that you can moderate that, but also if you're just responding simply, that's when you would say I mean, I don't know. It's tough to pull out an example without
That's fair.
seeing something, but...
Oh, so if I just threw an idea out there, you know, just like, well, who do y'all think that you are saying what y'all just said? How would you gently clap back to that? Be like, how are you hating from the club when you can't get in?
Oh, damn.
I mean, that's something that, depending on the brand, I would probably give our credentials. Like, oh, what do you mean, who are we? Like, we are a family-owned company that's been around since 1873, and we...
And you were born in 1986, so be quiet. Okay.
I mean, I feel like everything up until that last bit you added on was a gentle clap back, and then you full clapped again.
Again.
You did. You're always bringing to the full clap, which I respect.
Okay. Yeah, and also I was born in 1986, so I'm not trying to shame anyone that was, because I'm right there with you.
Fair.
So, I mean, just for the record.
So, like, it's sort of working with the bounds of social media, and you're like, okay, like, I can respond to this person without, like, what you're trying to do is, like, not shut them down, maybe shut them down just gently.
And it's acknowledging that you see what they're saying.
Yes.
You're not ignoring it. You're not hiding from it or running away from it.
Or, like, making it disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that is one thing, like, if you just delete a comment or hide a comment. So you are acknowledging it, and then you are pushing back. And I think that, you know, if you were going to tie it back to the industry, too, it's similar to how you handle a really difficult guest. If you are given the option, depending on who, you know, you're working with, to push back, to not just take something that somebody is saying, that you're actually able to make them think about what they're saying, remind them that there are actual people behind these devices and these comments, even though it's a brand and it's the internet. You know, it is that gentle clap back.
And it's sort of like...
Yeah, I clap too hard.
It's okay.
So ways that brands can use social media to hold claims to their narrative. I mean, what's wonderful about social is that you are in general, given the opportunity to post once per day. You could post more or less if you want, but on average, that's a cadence. Once per day, you get the opportunity to tell your story both in image and in text. So you are able to tell a larger narrative over time, but also giving little snippets day to day. You are able to show behind the scenes. You are able to show historical accounts of your brand. You are able to show what you're projecting in the future. You're able to show your staff who you might not see otherwise. You know, obviously the faces of your brand, let's say you have brand ambassadors, of course we know them, but you might have a really badass person in your accounting team. You're able to tell this story and you're not committing to something with every single post, which is something that I try to tell my clients all the time. Every individual post is not a full commitment to your entire marketing plan. You're able to spread it out. You're able to tell a little bit of a story one day and a little bit of something else the other day.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely.
But what do you say to people who perceive social media as like a commitment to like what they're trying to project? Because we have a lot of like situations coming up where people are like, you know, I believe in Black Lives Matter. And then you see them later on doing problematic things and not necessarily supporting that.
Totally.
You know?
Crafted in the boardroom and just fueled by inaction.
Yeah.
If I can say that.
Oh yeah, they're just leaning on the optics. Like there's absolutely no substance or change behind what they're doing. It's that whole black square thing that happened, you know, where that was the only show of activism, and then brands and individuals put that black square up, patted themselves on the back and said, well, I did the thing, and then moved on.
Exactly.
Life as normal. That's something that, as a social media professional, I try to push my clients to participate in a conversation in a meaningful way, only if they're going to actually do something. What changes are you making? At minimum, are you making a monetary commitment to a nonprofit that's actually making change? But I mean, that's the minimum. But of course, we want to see you changing your business practices. How are you planning on changing in the future? And then these are things that you can describe on social. You tell people, this is what we're doing, these are the changes we're making. We're going to be more inclusive, we're going to be hiring differently, we're going to be having different levels of accountability for our executive board, or whatever the case may be. I think social media offers a great opportunity to highlight those actions, but it also gives people the ability to take the cheap way out and just to take credit optically.
Yeah.
And then just kind of go back to business as usual. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I guess. Social media is a great tool, but also I think as communities, we need to hold these brands and individuals accountable if they're saying Black Lives Matter, if they do hashtag BLM in their bio, but they're not actually showing anything. Or, you know, right now, as we're recording, it's December, you know, months after all of this activism, and we're not seeing anything from these people who were holding signs out in the streets back when it was trendy, and we're not hearing anything about this.
I know, because it doesn't matter anymore.
Because it's not as cool. Yeah. It's not as trendy.
Yeah, it's not the moment. The moment
passed.
Well, yeah, the moment for activism versus the moment for change always seem to like miss one another in the night when it comes to just organizational decisions.
Yeah, and it's like, I feel like if a brand is going to like make a statement, they should prepare for the accountability aspect of it, which I think has been missing this entire time. So no one really thinks that that's going to come up next. But it's like, how does that contribute to their like environments in the workspace? Like, imagine being someone that works for that company, you're scrolling through social media and you're like, oh, you like say this thing, but then you know personally from experience that that's not necessarily what's happening. How does social media sort of conflate the relationship between the people that work for them and then in companies or brands in a real life setting, which is like work life?
I think also something that social media does is it gives every single brand a voice, even small brands, because historically what you would need to have done is filmed the commercial, most likely, and then paid for that production, paid to air it repeatedly for people to see your messaging. Now every brand has an Instagram, so every brand has an opportunity to join this conversation. So it's giving them kind of like a cheap way to say like, oh yeah, BLM, you know, and without actually making changes, when in the past I think, you know, brands would have been much quieter. And then to be quite honest, I'm not sure what the solution is when it comes to these brands that are capitalizing on this messaging and not following through.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is how there's tiers of that brand sort of access, right? Because you have conversation contributors, you have conversation starters, and then you have like conversation like makers. And those at the bottom level, they'll just, you know, contribute here and now. They're like, yes, of course, BLM. But there are brands to where it's just like, stop being about that talk and really be about that action. So.
And like, I guess sort of in the same vein, but separate, would be the question of how does what you're doing sort of differentiate from companies controlling their own accounts? Like, because my understanding is that you like shape the social media of like these different brands, but what's the difference between what you're doing and when brands try to do it themselves, I guess?
So what I do specifically as an agency, again, using that term loosely, is I am taking messaging that already exists within a brand and I'm translating it to social.
Okay.
So there are times though where I push back. For example, I did have a client back in June when there was a lot of tension and they wanted to do a black square and they wanted to do like a little post about like BOM, buy our product. And so I, of course, as...
Feel that eye roll.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Right. Well, exactly. So again, like I'm a vendor. I'm not a part of the company, but I do feel a responsibility to not be contributing to exactly what is wrong.
I'm going to go ahead and say thank you so much for saying that and following through on it.
Just took that out of... Yes.
Yeah.
Completely.
Okay. Yeah, I could. I mean, there's no way I
Couldn't
could have done
more.
that. But that's what I had to tell the brands. Like, look, I can't force you to necessarily do the right thing. I can't force you to make changes internally. I can make that suggestion on our status call next week, whatever. But I will tell you that you cannot be posting this. First of all, this isn't a marketing ploy. We're not using this as a marketing ploy. Second of all, I don't even think you should have a voice in this conversation if you're not actually changing anything.
Yeah. That seems valid.
But
Wow.
I'm an agency. I'm also self-employed. I have the ability to push back. If I was someone working internally for a brand, as someone who, you know, I would be a lower level employee, I wouldn't have the ability to say that and know that I would have job security.
Sure.
So that's part of the problem when there are teams that work in-house, or if I was just a lower level employee at a large agency, I wouldn't have the authority to speak. Or I could, but I could lose my job.
It's interesting that you bring up the aspect of job security, because even in your element of the hospitality spectrum, job security is just a constant. You know, like whether it's front of house, back of house, whether you're gently clapbacking to someone that you're working with versus, you know, in a physical space or also now in a digital space. It's like, again, job security, that whole aspect of like, well, I might be able to get away with this, but I'm probably not, because, you know, I'm becoming part of the problem via their perspective than their solution.
Yeah.
So.
Which is sad that we're still in times where you have to put your humanity on the back burner in order to make a living. But the fact that you were even like, you know, maybe you shouldn't do the thing is like a huge step from where we were. Because I feel like a lot of people take the opportunity to make money wherever they can. And that has, and that's been like a huge driving force in the industry as we know it this entire time. And I think that it's really interesting that we are all starting to be like, whoa, maybe we should like take a minute to reintroduce ourselves, you know, to, you know, humanity. Hospitality, if you will. The thing we do.
Shocking.
It's fine.
You know, and I just have a burning question, because I know how I feel, and I just really want to get into it, but I don't want to jump ahead, Nuriba.
No, go for it. Get in there. Ask what the burning question in your mind is.
Okay, you know what? I feel empowered.
You're empowered. This is a space.
I want to talk close too.
Yes.
Come on in.
Hi.
Yes. This is the party and you are invited. So from your perspective and your experience, I would love your thoughts on the influencer impact on the hospitality experience. And I know that can be quite the response. So I want to kind of break it down a little bit. So the rise of influencer culture, so the seemingly need for it, but then the execution of influencer culture and then the maintenance of influencer culture. Like, why is it still something to where if you have X amount of followers that allows you to have a significant say in the hospitality experience?
Okay, so there's a lot a lot.
There's like 9 questions in there.
Right.
So just like,
but also influencer culture is so multifaceted.
Of course.
First of all, I will say influencer marketing is something that we often scoff at as people who aren't a part of it or aren't consumers of it, which is completely valid. It is ridiculous on its face. But influencer culture isn't simply, you know, that woman who has a bunch of photos of like her holding up a product in like a cute yoga outfit and being like, buy this, click here, use my code and you get 20% off. Like that is one part of it. But the other part of influencer culture, it's people who simply have influence, what we call cultural influencers. They're not professional influencers or they didn't seek this out. They just happen to have influence. Which is something that I've noticed specifically in Chicago, New York, and LA. The industry is tapping a lot of these folks and giving them money in exchange for posts, which is, of course, also influencer culture.
Yeah.
It just looks a little different than typical influencer culture. You know, on the personal side of it, I will say that I roll my eyes on a regular basis. I don't know if this is necessarily the right thing to be doing because we are giving a lot of power and clout to people who focused on their follower count rather than maybe some other avenues in life. But as someone who does this professionally, I think this is an excellent method of marketing.
Yeah.
You know, especially these people who have genuinely and authentically cultivated communities that are engaged, that truly care about what it is that they're doing and saying. You know, I can think of a handful of people here in Chicago who are getting brand deals because they just did a really good job. They're good people and they did a good job on Instagram, and now you've got liquor brands giving them money to you know, like, and that's great.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that I've changed my mind about influencer culture a lot, especially in these times. And I think it depends on like what you're looking for. Like influencer culture has sort of been used in not a spiteful way, but it's sort of like a 4-letter word in the industry because it's like, especially if you're a laborer, you don't see the benefits of it. All you do is feel the work that comes from it. So I think that especially now, I find myself looking at people who have started talking the way that I talk, or the people who are aligning themselves with similar values versus like products.
Yeah, it's like the representation.
Yeah, it's I understand the cultural influencer a little bit more than like your standard issue influencer culture. So thank you for explaining that, because it made sense in my brain when you said it like that.
Yes, because there is a huge difference. There's people who authentically have built this following. You know, people wanted to follow them. They were truly magnetic. They have people who don't necessarily. And here's something that's interesting too. Like as a marketer, we have tools we can tell what kind of audience you have, and we can tell if your audience also follows other influencers.
Yeah.
And I say this as like the typical influencer. So we know if you have the type of person who is into that sort of thing. And so if I have a brand who I think is really authentic, really like true, cool is not the best word, but like an actual brand that we might enjoy, not just like a diet pill brand who I would never work with anyway, but like an actual brand of something.
Let them know.
Right, no diet pills, which is a very typical influencer-y product. But I can look at this and I can say like, your audience is the type of people who might not care about this like vegan leather boot brand that's handmade here in the city. Like you might not care about that. So we're going to find someone who has an audience who truly enjoys what it is that they're doing around the city. There's a lot of people who are actually like makers and pace setters in their own way. And we're going to go with these different types of audiences. So also as marketers, like we're able to see things that you might not even see as a user of social media. If that makes sense. But it also helps us determine the difference between like capital I influencer and also like just cultural influencer.
Okay.
The latter is who I'd fuck.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for my personal account, I would never follow like a typical influencer.
I'm like, I feel like I just eat the chips, I'm just out here following people for no reason until like I see something problematic and then I'm like, no. But, do
you unfollow people for, I wouldn't even say problematic things, just like you just get annoyed and unfollow?
If I see too much of like the same shit, I will unfollow someone. Because then it's like, because when I start following someone, it's because I genuinely enjoy their content. And as soon as I see too much like pushing of brands and it doesn't seem like organic or authentic, I'm like, no. You just want me to like this because it turns into dollar bills for you. Mm-hmm. And that's my like hard line. Like
you're not going to be making money off of me liking a post that I'm following for you because I was following it for you, not for this brand.
Exactly. And I think that like I would hope that more people would be as thoughtful about social media, but I know that that's not true. Social media is generally a place where you go to find things, but not necessarily where you stay for things. And I think influencers are doing a really great job in some extent as to like maintaining those relationships. But it's 50-50 and it's based on a bunch of factors that like you guys have to keep into account. Like, is this going to be popular now? Is it going to be popular tomorrow? Are people going to be talking about this later? Like, I personally can't do it. So I'm glad that people like you exist who like can do that. Because I'm out here like, you can eat it if you want to, and I throw it on the table and I walk away. Like, don't ask me to go talk to a table. That's why I stand in the back. Which is why I feel like we work really well together, because you're like an aesthetics person and I'm over here wearing this like flannel.
I got this Champion hoodie on. So.
Champion came back full swing, my dude. You are rocking the hottest new gear. Can we talk about this right now?
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I'm wearing all black all day, every day.
You're cool. Don't worry about it.
I think you both look great, for the record. No one can see what you are looking like, but I will tell the audience that you both look very cool. Whether or not you intended to.
I came directly from a 9-hour shift.
And I had a shoot earlier today, so thank you. Well,
you're a magical human, for sure. Well, that's
and
because
you
you're a
great.
gym
You're
teacher.
Wearing these
Look at these
Arizona T sneakers.
All right.
Stop it.
We're going to take a moment to appreciate the writers.
What we're doing right now is what?
We're going to hype up the Arizona iced tea kicks that our writer, Max Fresh AF,
Producer Max wearing these kicks right now.
Is that really Arizona iced tea? Because from here it definitely looks. It's official.
Yes.
Yeah.
What? How did you get? Are you an influencer?
You know what?
You know what?
You know what? Really quick. Loving this for all of us.
Yes.
Just for time.
Yeah, we gotta reel it in. Yeah.
This will be episode 002 V2, so we can keep up this hype beast
energy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you talked a bit about. Sorry, I'm just taking notes. Yeah. You talked a bit about.
He's like, love the Arizona tea sneakers.
I do. They're great. They were like $65. They're so cheap.
Okay. Right back at it.
So you talked about brands getting their stuff out there. You talked about the positives. Mm-hmm. I would love to hear if you've had experiences with brands trying to use social media to put band-aids and like cover up toxic practices as like a stopgap from slipping too much, or they have like toxic practices exposed and then they try and use social media to cover it up.
Yes. So I've witnessed this a lot and heard about it, and I also personally have had the displeasure of having to market single-use plastic, for example, and try to convince everyone that our pet is totally fine and actually beneficial for people and the environment. Long story short, it's not even long story. It's simply not.
Yeah.
But I have, what's interesting too is as a vendor, because I do not work for these companies. I work for myself and they pay me. As a vendor, I am often put through the brainwashing process myself. Mm-hmm. And then they try to convince me of these things as though I can't do my own research and see that what they're trying to push is inaccurate. But then they say, okay, we're going to get to it. We're going to convince the masses that what we're doing as a plastic company is good. And it's my job then to convince people of that online. And these types of brands, we spend a lot more time focusing on how we're going to respond to comments and to negativity, as opposed to a normal brand where you would just go on business as usual and something negative would be rare.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. And social media is the front lines. We are there to communicate back and forth and to have this conversation to try to spin and twist things to seem one way when truly the brand is not what they seem.
Yeah.
So I've had...
There's that curtain culture again.
Curtain culture.
I had that one experience, and I'm very grateful to not be doing any of that anymore, but I do see this happening on a regular basis. And as someone who does this day in and day out, this messaging, I can see it when brands are doing it. I also see it specifically within the industry, how a lot of these restaurant groups or even individuals within the industry are attempting to use social to justify a lot of the things that they're doing or potentially cover up a lot of these negative practices. I mean, this is a great way for them to twist things and also to edit as they please. They may be the ones to delete comments.
Yeah.
You sent me this article yesterday, and this chef, this well-known chef, was saying something, and he was challenged, and his response, rather than actually responding, was to block the challenger. I mean, it gives you have these tools to cheaply either back away from a conversation or to silence somebody else and remove them from it. So social media can definitely be manipulated in many ways for this.
I just had to take a deep breath because, everything you said is the truth. And I think from an industry perspective, yes, it's a way to hype up your brand and get your things out there. But at the same time, when you're only posting photos of your product and only talking about your product and not leaving room for the people that produce this, you take away the humans in the situation.
Well, it's also a way to hide.
Yeah, but from the not hiding perspective, it doesn't allow consumers to realize that there are people behind the products that they enjoy. And everyone just wants, but they don't think about the way that their wanting affects the work that is being done. And I think social media, in a sense, sort of yes, you're looking at people all day, but that's not necessarily what's actually happening in reality.
And that makes me think of what you're alluding to. It's, this regarded chef was mentioning something, and then, I did not know that they blocked the challenger. That's what I did not know about. But there's so much focus on the chefs and not the brand that paid to have that post out there in the first place. And that is what I think is a really interesting spin that no one is talking about. Because my phone was blowing up left and right because people that I knew were commenting on all of this stuff. And I'm just like, ooh, okay. I was like, this is deep, this is wild. And then, Eater Chicago picked it up. And there was one mention that it was a paid sponsorship, but even additional comments did not mention that brand again.
We should give a little context. So for those who aren't aware, just long story short, there was an acclaimed chef who had a sponsored post from a food brand, and the chef posted it on their Instagram page, and it was a very whitewashed version of a Korean dish, and this chef got a lot of backlash in the comments, but also there were some other chefs there to defend this chef. Anyway, that's essentially what happened. But you're right, it was a sponsored post, and in my mind, when I saw this, I think there are a lot of things to unpack with this situation, but one thing is that this chef is getting a lot of the backlash, but this went through at least a dozen people before getting posted.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Like, all these people had a chance to see it, and no one thought, maybe we shouldn't do this the way that we're doing it.
Right, and I think what kind of helped fuel that dialogue was this well-regarded chef expressing his connection to what he felt is just a very personal culinary experience to not only him but his family and just his community. And it just, again, as I saw, just started such a wildfire.
A tizzy, if you will.
Oh, completely. I was spun right round.
Well, what's interesting too is that now a comment section on an Instagram post is enough for an Eater article. I mean, the Eater article was 100% based off of like individual comments, and
those were pulled quotes.
I mean, right, pulling quotes from Instagram's comment section is such a bizarre, I would say, degradation of journalism. Like, what are we doing here? You instead of allowing us to just follow these people on our own, you're now forcing us to see this conversation. I mean, I think there were some valid points that were made in the comment section, but then I think the article was also highlighting some trolls that didn't need to be, like, we don't need to give a voice to them any more than they've already found for themselves.
Great. I'm 50-50 on it. I think that because of the way that the world is changing, yes, it's up to us to have due diligence, but I think that we shouldn't discredit the voice of the people that are posting on social media, because a lot of people don't have any way to actually make a statement that matters. And I think that when you find a quote on social media that is then put into letterhead, it's putting the conversation into a wider audience, because not everyone that we think matters is on social media as much, but they read print. And that's like a lost art form in a sense.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we have to like be careful about how much we try to discredit people without followers, because just because people aren't following you doesn't mean you don't have anything to say.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with that. Yes.
I think that's a thing that we have to learn to make space for, because the more that we learn from people who aren't already in the forefront, we can change the way that our pedestals have been set up.
I completely agree.
Yes, pedestals.
Sorry.
No. And I was just referring to some of the dialogue, which was
that they chose to pull.
Yeah, that was to just like incite just so much
that's
negativity,
them influencing how we see the information being put out there.
Right. And then
what was also so interesting in this particular case was that there was a lot of back and forth in the comments section. That one chef, I don't know if I name names, but like, okay, so the one chef who was pushing back and saying like, hey, I think that the way you've posted this is insensitive and I wish you would have given it more thought. He got attacked, and then he posted something on his Instagram page being like, I didn't intend for my comments to be in this whole article. I didn't want to be a martyr. I didn't want this attention. I was simply pushing back. And that's it. I didn't want her to be canceled.
Yes.
And so that's also an interesting thing too, though, of like, he doesn't, he doesn't want the spotlight either. Like, no one wanted any of that.
And that's on the publication because they didn't reach out to this person and get their consent to put their shit out in public.
Right. I think it's because they think that if you're putting it on social media, it is public, which
Exactly.
sure, it is. But do we need it amplified across all different facets of media?
No.
Because there definitely needs to, I mean, if you, we can go on and on about that, which we will.
Yeah, we got time.
We will.
Not today, but in the future.
Most certainly.
In
Yes,
general.
in general.
This isn't short-lived.
Yeah, because it's going to be
We're going to make this last forever.
this ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as we wrap it up, I'd love to hear what we can do to keep brands accountable online versus, and then also talk a little bit more about the social media in the future.
I think a way that we can hold brands accountable on social media is to push back. Like this example that we just said about this Eater article and how they're... See, this is where it gets tricky. I would say that we need to hold brands accountable if we are seeing messaging coming through that is problematic, insensitive, whatever the case may be. We do have the ability to reach out in the comments, send DMs if you want to do it privately and not have yourself also in the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these things are important. And I also think it's very important to notice if you are doing that and you are not being heard, there needs to be additional accountability. Now that is much easier, more easily said than done, because it's hard for us to all communicate. For example, there's one brand that is consistently putting something out that's mildly problematic, where people may send them messages and say, hey, your intentions may have been one thing, but my interpretation, my feelings are another. I just want to let you know, like, this doesn't seem like an egregious offense, but it's something to keep in mind. And if you send that DM and then you see that it's read and nothing comes of it, or it's not even read, or they just say, okay, thanks, or something that's just like flippant.
Yeah.
That's something that needs to be addressed. And I personally don't know the best way to do that. It would require communication within a community to do that and hold these brands accountable. Because again, the worst of the worst are going to be editing these conversations publicly. They're going to be deleting comments, hiding comments. So it's going to be really hard for us to see.
Creating burner accounts.
Yes, yeah. So I think that I would like to think that most brands would be receptive and they want to be made better and they would change with the community gently pushing back. But if not, then that's a much more complicated issue.
Yeah.
It's a speak up sort of vibe.
I think it's important to speak up. And I'm not saying to put an account on blast and to just come out with like fury in all caps in the comments and be saying like, that goes into cancel culture and that's a whole other thing.
We like to avoid cancel culture here. We're talking about consequence culture.
Yes.
Like if you put the information out there and you just, people start to reap what they've been sowing, that's different.
Yep. And I think that part of that would be this pushing back or I think DMs are a great way too to have a conversation with the brand. There is someone there. There's always someone there. So if you are reaching out to a brand via DM or messages or whatever, and they're not getting back to you,
that's a choice.
That is
okay.
That's a choice, or they need to hire someone.
More people. Someone.
Yeah.
Now let's do final thanks into socials and wrap up.
Yeah. So
shout out to my homie Charles H. Heisnick for this. Heisdick. Oh my
Charles
God.
Heisdick, Champagne. Thank you so much for helping us grease the wheels on this conversation. It's lovely. Oh, Nuri was getting
I gotta look at it
Okay,
more.
no problem. No problem. And obviously to Ace Hotel Chicago for hosting this conversation. Thank you so very much. And again, this is Justin Everett Arnett Graham at What's Beco on Instagram. So shouts to y'all. I had a great time. Thank you.
I did too. Thank you so much for having me. The beautiful Ace Hotel with these wonderful bubbles. But thank you so much. This has been great. I look forward to future conversations, I hope.
And where can people find you?
Oh, my company, you don't want to follow me personally. I'm very obnoxious. And if you do, I'm so sorry. But my company is at disco.social, and we're a little less obnoxious there.
My name is Nariba Shepherd. You can find me at Rebaru, Rebaru on Instagram. And jobless or jobless, I guess.